Chapter 284. They redistributed their seats and sat in the meeting room. Wuming still sat at the head of the table. Rin Enbin, Luvia, Shiro Amiya, and Sakura Madu sat on Wuming's left. Bazette, Ilya, Little Black, and Mayu sat on Wuming's right. Gil sat across from Wuming. Since everyone is here, let's start the official allocation. Wuming crossed his arms in front of his chest with a solemn expression. Everyone felt the solemn atmosphere and puffed out their chests. Since the other party's goal is the Holy Grail, Ilya, Little Black, and Mayu will be on standby at the Shuiyue mansion. Wuming was the first to speak. Why is it like this? Ilya said with slight displeasure. Well, there's nothing we can do about it. The other party's goal is the Holy Grail. Other than Mayu, you and I might also be the other party's target, Little Black advised. Although Mayu was slightly dissatisfied, she was also someone who knew the severity of the situation. Hence she nodded. When Ilya saw that her two companions agreed with Wuming's words, she could only nod helplessly in the end. Well, don't be unhappy. I'll make something nice for you later. Wuming comforted Ilya. Really? Big brother is the best. Ilya smiled happily. Ooh, big brother is unfair. I want to eat too. Little Black looked like an abandoned puppy. He lay on the table and stared at Wuming. That. Mayu also looked at Wuming hesitantly. She knew that she could not always cause trouble for her big brother. However, Mayu really wanted to eat her big brother's delicacies. Wuming did not know whether to laugh or cry. Then let's make glutinous rice balls. There will be a share for all three of us. How about that? Little Black said excitedly. I'm looking forward to it. Ilya said expectantly. Mayu nodded lightly. Looking at the three of them who were extremely happy, Wuming smiled from the bottom of his heart. At this moment, there was a loud bang. Rin Enbin slammed the table and stood up. You guys, we're in the middle of a battle conference. Can you be more serious? Shiro Amiya and Sakura Madu smiled awkwardly, but did not say anything. After all, he was their big brother. They had to give him some face. However, the others didn't give him any face, especially Rin and Osaka and Lu Weiya, who had been provoked. After all, this is the enemy's time, so let's hurry up. Lu Weiya said angrily, and then turned her head away. Needless to say, Lu Weiya didn't want to see the palace guard, who was already taken, showing off his affection. Sorry, let's continue with the battle conference. Wuming coughed awkwardly. The three little Lolas also blushed. Rin Enbin and loses you two? To be honest, Wuming had a headache. Although these two girls were students of the clock tower, they were comparable to first-class magicians. However, in a battle where servants were involved, they were undoubtedly useless. You could say that they were a little hurt, but it happened that the damage they caused was not a big deal at all. Wuming touched his forehead, thought for a moment, and then said, How about this, you two also stay in Shoasuke's house? In this regard, Rin Enbin and Luz didn't show much dissatisfaction. Although they said that they wanted to help, after knowing that the enemy was a servant, they basically gave up the idea of going to the battlefield. Although it was a bit of putting the cart before the horse, Rin Enbin and Luz still wanted to thank Wuming for not treating them as a burden. After all, Wuming didn't want them to come here together. Because of their personal reasons, they were brought here by Wuming. For such a result, the two couldn't say that they were disappointed, but they couldn't say that they were happy. After all, no one wanted to be treated as a useless guy. But you're different from Ilya and the others. You need to help me drive Shoasuke's. The two were not surprised by Wuming's SSSS. That. Big brother, what do you mean by driving Shoasuke's? Rin Enbin and Luz were puzzled. Ilya and the others were also quite puzzled. It means literally. Wuming finished and snapped his fingers. Then with a pop sound, countless blue semi-virtual screens appeared in the conference room. On the countless blue virtual screens in the conference room, almost all of them showed something that not only Ilya and the others couldn't understand, but even Shiro Amiya, who lived with Wuming for a long time, couldn't understand. Wuming's hand gently moved, and a large number of blue virtual screens were removed, and a special virtual screen floated above Wuming's head. The reason why it was special was that this screen was all about Shoasuke's and the surrounding real-time surveillance, including the surveillance of the conference room. Looking at the countless partitions, everyone was surprised. Is this a magic workshop? No matter how I look at it, it looks like a laboratory. Rin Enbin said helplessly. Well, this is a temple I modified according to modern times. Not only does it have real-time surveillance, but it also has visual obstruction enchantment, magic suppression enchantment platform, autonomous attack chain enchantment, and other autonomous enchantments for attack, defense, and investigation. It also has space folding technology. As long as it is activated, the internal space of Shoasuke's will be instantly enlarged by 100 times, and I have set up all kinds of traps that can be imagined. In addition, there are flight and transformation functions, and after referring to Gil's Vimana, I also added a few nuclear warheads. Wu Ming said, pointing to the innocent young Gil. Everyone looked at Wu Ming, who was talking nonstop, and they were all stunned, looking at Wu Ming blankly. All in all, this is a multifunctional strategic mobile fortress. I named it Shoasuke Temple. Wu Ming finished and breathed a sigh of relief. No wonder I always felt that the house has become a little different. It turned out that it was transformed by my brother. Shiro Amiya sighed. No, Shiro Oniai-san, brother Wu Ming did not transform Amiya Mansion, but built a new one in the parallel world. Mayu pointed out Shiro Amiya's misunderstanding. Well, when I built this house, it was not only to be my and Mayo's home. I have been planning to counterattack Ainsworth. Of course, I have to be prepared. Wu Ming waved his hand, indicating that everyone should not make a fuss. Since I met you, my heart has almost gotten used to it. Same. Rin and Osaka and Livia both sighed at the same time. Well, at first I just wanted to build a defense base, and it slowly developed into this. Wu Ming scratched his head. In short, your task is to be responsible for assisting us on the battlefield. I will teach you how to use it later. Then Wu Ming turned his head and looked at Shiro Amiya and Sakura Madu. Shiro, Sakura, I ask you two again, do you really want to participate? Chapter 285. Wu Ming asked Shiro Amiya and Sakura Madu when he went to pick them up from England. Do you really want to participate in this battle? I've already returned and am fully prepared. It doesn't matter if you don't participate. Wu Ming said. Shiro Amiya and Sakura Madu answered. Brother, I've been working hard to learn magic here just to wait for this day. I'll be wherever Senpai is. And now their answers were exactly the same as before. Mayo's friends have all come to this world. As her brother, I can't fall behind. I'll be wherever Senpai is. This is also my way of repaying brother Wu Ming for saving my life. Shiro Amiya and Sakura Madu's eyes were filled with determination. I'm really an idiot for asking you such a question. Wu Ming shook his head self-deprecatingly. Since you've already decided, then as your brother, I can only fully support you. Shiro and Sakura, you two will be in charge of the attack on Julian. Wu Ming arranged. However, when he mentioned Julian, Shiro Amiya still felt a little gloomy. After all, he considered himself to be a good friend. By the way, Shiro, I'll help you adjust your body later. And Sakura, remember to give me your rank card later. Rank cards created by those things, even if it's just pure strength, will erode your mind if you use it for a long time. Shiro Amiya and Sakura Madu both nodded. Then Wu Ming looked at Bizette, who had been silent all this time. Wu Ming actually didn't know how to deal with Bizette. Originally, it was only because of his bad taste that he let Bizette become a servant of the Shoyu residence, and he was half forced to come to the parallel world with him. After all, the backlight sword was a super bug-like existence. Even if Wu Ming's heart was super strong, he wouldn't dare take this causal weapon head-on. Who knew if his heart was strong enough? After all, the backlight sword only changed karma to strike the heart, and it didn't necessarily pierce through the heart. Of course, if his main body was here, there was nothing to be afraid of. You don't have to care about what I think. This is a mission given to me by the higher-ups. The only thing I can do is fight. Bizette seemed to know what Wu Ming was thinking, so he said this. Bizette had received news from his superiors that he was to follow Hyunryong to the parallel world, complete all his instructions, and bring back as much information as possible. Of course, those were added by Bazette's superiors. After all, it wasn't easy for them to come to Parallel World, so how could they not collect some items? As for the matter of Wuming going to the Parallel World, Wuming had told Zelik that there was no need to deliberately hide it. Instead of letting the higher-ups who were worried about Wuming's departure have wild thoughts and add trouble to Wuming, it was better to let them feel at ease and be obedient. Since you've said so, follow me to the battlefield. Then follow Shiro and Sakura as a member of the execution team and attack the enemy leader. After all, you're not the type to fight in groups. I understand. Bazette nodded solemnly. Finally, Wuming looked at young Gil, who was sitting opposite him, and said, "Then, the last one is you, my disciple. Teacher, do you have a mission? I will be very obedient." Young Gil smiled elegantly and gently. No matter how one looked at him, he looked like an innocent and beautiful boy. "If it's you, you don't need me to assign you a mission. Just act according to the situation," Wuming said with a look of disdain. Why are you like this, teacher?" Young Gil looked at Wuming as if he had been bullied. "Well, but since it's teacher's words, I can only obey." Wuming ignored young Gil and looked at everyone. "Then that's it. Ilya, Mayu, and Blackie will stay behind at the Shoyu mansion and act according to the situation. Ling and Livia will be responsible for driving the Shoyu mansion as support. Shiro, Sakura, and Bazette will be the execution team, specifically targeting Julian. Gil will roam the battlefield, and I will be responsible for resisting the army. Does anyone have any questions?" At this moment, Ilya raised her hand. "Ilya." Wuming called her name. "Yes, I want to know how Big Brother is going to resist the servant army. Is he going to fight alone? If not, may you Blackie and I can also help." Ilya said with concern. "You don't have to worry about this at all." The one who spoke was not Wuming, but Shiro Amiya. Big Brother has an army. Shiro Amiya was naturally talking about the golem Wuming summoned from Nazalik. At that time, because of various skills flying around on the battlefield, countless golem that were comparable to low-level servants were lost, and the rest were swallowed by the black mud in their struggle. Fortunately, those were only projections, and Wuming could naturally continue to summon them. However, even if there were many small soldiers, they were still small soldiers in front of an expert. However, Wuming naturally had a new idea. "You don't need to worry about that. I'm not going to fight against an army alone." Wuming smiled. "Well, I'll adjust Shiro's physical condition first. Everyone else, go and rest first." For a moment, only Shiro Amiya and Sakura Madu were left in the conference room. Sakura Madu stayed behind to give the rank card to Wuming later, and to accompany Shiro Amiya. "Well, take off your clothes first." Wuming spoke first. "Oh!" Shiro Amiya and Sakura Madu both exclaimed. Looking at Sakura Madu, who was blushing, and looking at Shiro Amiya, who was slightly embarrassed, Wuming shook his head. Looking at the two's performance, Wuming knew that the two probably hadn't reached that stage yet. They probably just held hands, hugged and kissed. It's going to happen sooner or later anyway. Hurry up and take it off. Do you need me to help you? Wuming narrowed his eyes, looked at Shiro Amiya, and said threateningly, I know, Big Brother." As someone who lived with Shiro Amiya for almost 5 years, Shiro Amiya naturally understood Wuming's temperament. Therefore, Shiro Amiya quickly took off his clothes, leaving only his underwear on. The naked Wei Gong Shirlang revealed a body full of strength, but not exaggerated muscles. This was the legendary saying, "Wearing clothes makes one look thin, but taking off clothes makes one look muscular." At this moment, Sakura Madu, who was looking at her lover's body, was already blushing and didn't dare to look over. "Ahem, I only told you to take off your upper body. Why did you take off your lower body?" Wuming laughed mischievously. Shiro Amiya, who was still blushing, suddenly looked helpless. "This is good, it's easier to adjust your body," Wuming quickly said. Then, Wuming snapped his fingers, and a device similar to a man-made transparent culture tank rose from the floor of the conference room. Chapter 286. "Let's go in," Wuming said. Shiro Amiya looked at Wuming, then looked at Sakura Madu, and then walked toward the open container. When he reached the opening, Wuming pushed Shiro Amiya, and then slammed the container door shut. Really, this is not a life and death parting. Do you have to be so serious, sigh young people nowadays? Wuming pretended to shake his head helplessly. Shiro Amiya and Sakura Madu, who were originally shocked, were slightly embarrassed after hearing Wuming's words. Noble and powerful, wise and kind. That is, I will incarnate into a miracle and lead the world to the dawn. Wuming didn't say much nonsense and directly activated the magician incarnation. After all, this was a problem with magic, and this incarnation was more useful. Wuming stood in front of the container and stretched out a hand. Then let's begin. After that, a golden magic circle the size of Wuming's palm appeared and kept rotating. The container, which originally only contained Shiro Amiya, was instantly filled with liquid, and Shiro Amiya blew a bubble. The originally featureless container also began to glow. Senpai. Sakura Madu ran to the front of the container worriedly. Oni-sama, what's going on? Won't Senpai drown? Looking at Sakura Madu's anxious expression, Wuming smiled helplessly. Don't worry, these are just some liquid that can make people get oxygen in an environment where they can't breathe. They are often used in the creation of androids, so don't worry. After hearing Wuming's words, Sakura Madu relaxed and breathed a sigh of relief. I used hypnosis magic, Shiro. You can have a good sleep. When you wake up, you will find that your body is very good. Wuming's words faintly, Shiro Amiya's eyelids began to slowly close in the container. Wuming stretched out his hand and took out a book from the golden ripples that appeared at the side. That book was Wuming's noble phantasm, the nameless spellbook. Then I'll start. After that, Wuming closed his eyes, held the nameless spellbook in one hand, and the other hand was flat on his chest, pointing to the container where Shiro Amiya was, and the magic circle on his palm began to change. With the addition of the magician avatar, Wuming could now directly release some magic without chanting, which was the case now. Many magic spells on the nameless spellbook were frequently used by Wuming, constantly acting on Shiro Amiya. In addition to producing culture fluid to make people fall asleep, this culture tank also had the effect of enhancing magic, playing a supporting role. After all, this was designed by Wuming, and it was basically according to Wuming's habits. Wuming stopped the magic circle in his hand, closed the nameless spellbook, and opened his eyes. Oni-sama, is it done? Sakura Madu asked with some uncertainty. Wuming smiled helplessly. How is that possible? Shiro's body is even more broken than I thought. Shiro Amiya used his future heroic spirit class card in the parallel world many times, but because he had to send Mayu away, Shiro Amiya gave up the class card. After that, because the heroic spirit on the class card was the same person as Shiro Amiya, the class card and Shiro Amiya became synchronized. After losing the class card, Shiro Amiya could still continue to use the power of the heroic spirit on the class card. In short, as Shiro Amiya continued to use this power, he began to gradually become a heroic spirit. However, for an ordinary person, this synchronized was a bit too much. Shiro Amiya's body couldn't withstand the burden of becoming a heroic spirit. The power of the heroic spirit was wreaking havoc in Shiro Amiya's body, and if he used this power, it would increase the erosion of the heroic spirit. Not only that, but the class card created by Ainsworth also had the power to erode one's heart, and even the body. Every card user's heart would be eroded by the heroic spirit on the class card. Although it wasn't much, over time, their personality would become more like that of the heroic spirit. Perhaps because of the black mud, these class cards had the ability to erode the user's body. This caused Shiro Amiya's body to become quite broken. Wuming told all this to Sakura Madu. Sakura Madu covered her mouth in disbelief and stared blankly at Shiro Amiya. I really didn't expect Shiro to be able to persevere. Wuming sighed. Senpai. Sakura Madu's eyes began to moisten, which was a sign that tears were about to flow out. Well then, Sakura, please move aside. I'm going to start treating Shiro. Sakura Madu turned her head to look at Wuming in shock. Wuming naturally knew why Sakura Madu was like that. Well, I didn't say that there was no way to save him. I just said that Shiro's body was seriously damaged. Wuming turned his head away and said unnaturally. I was just joking. Who knew that Sakura would fall into my trap? I'm sorry. Well, really, Oni-sama is so annoying. Sakura Madu stopped crying and smiled. If you want to apologize, wait until I completely heal Shiro. Wuming smiled apologetically. Then Wuming opened the nameless spellbook again. He still held the book in one hand and held the other hand in front of him, pointing in Shiro's direction. Just like before, a large number of palm-sized magic circles appeared on Wuming's palm. The magic circles were interlocked and intertwined. Then, under Wuming's command, they attached themselves to the culture tank. The culture tank that was originally shining shone even more brightly. Sakura Madu looked at this scene worriedly. No matter what, Shiro Amiya's body was seriously injured. After a long and short wait, Wuming stopped the magic circle in his hand and closed the nameless spellbook. The magic circle attached to the culture tank also turned into magic and disappeared. The culture tank also lost its light, and the culture fluid inside quickly disappeared. Fortunately, I didn't disappoint you. Go and see Shiro Sakura. Wuming smiled at Sakura Madu. Yes, thank you so much, Oni-sama. Thank you so much. Sakura Madu bowed to Wuming again and again. Wuming didn't know whether to laugh or cry. After all, Shiro is my brother, and you are my sister-in-law. Looking at Sakura Madu, who was walking towards the culture tank, Wuming said softly, Poochie. With this sound, the culture tank opened. Cough, cough, cough. Shiro Amiya, who had just adapted to the culture fluid, was not used to the air and coughed a few times as soon as he came out. Senpai, are you okay? Sakura Madu rushed forward and supported Shiro Amiya. I'm fine, Sakura. I'm just not used to the air. Now I feel like all the impurities in my body have been removed. It's very relaxed. Shiro Amiya smiled, and then said as he felt his body. Now no matter how you use that power, it won't have any effect on your body, Shiro. Chapter 287. Thank you, big brother. Shiro Amiya said sincerely. Wuming knew that he had to accept this gratitude no matter what. What are you talking about? You're my brother. Even if you're my sworn brother, there's no need to say thank you between us. Wuming didn't look back. Wuming waved his hand and put the culture tank on the ground. Sakura, go make something delicious for Shiro. Now Shiro's body needs to be nourished. It's best if it's meat. I remember there's still a lot of meat in the freezer. The freezer's location hasn't changed. Shiro knows where it is. Wuming turned around and said to Sakura Madu, who was supporting Shiro Amiya. Yes, I understand. Oni-sama, then I'll leave with Senpai first. Just as Sakura Madu was about to support Shiro Amiya to leave, Wuming said, Don't forget to leave your rank card behind. I didn't help you adjust your rank card. If your life is in danger because you used your rank card too much, I'm afraid Scholar will fight me to the death. Wuming teased at the end. Sakura Madu blushed. What? Big brother, don't drag me into this. Shiro Amiya smiled helplessly. Then I'll leave it to you, Oni-sama. Sakura Madu took out a card. On it was a picture of a man wearing a beast horn mask, holding a big sword, pretending to be crazy. This was Sakura Madu's Berserker card. The power inside was the Berserk Lancelot. Okay, that's enough. You guys can go now. Wuming took the card and said casually, Berserk Lancelot? The guy known as the Knight of the Lake will also degenerate into a berserker? How ironic. Wuming looked at the class card in his hand and smiled uninterestedly. After that, Wuming began to prepare for the purification of the class cards. The class cards that Ainsworth had made all had the negative ability to corrode one's heart and body. Because Shiro Amiya was using the power of his future self, he was almost immune to the psychological damage, but he couldn't avoid the physical damage. That was because the cards had been soaked in the black mud during the manufacturing process. Wuming carefully delved into it and discovered that the interior of the card had the scent of the black mud. Combined with the fact that a job grade card could erode a person's body and mind, this job grade card, including the one Wuming had given to Ilya and the others, as well as the one in Blackie's body, had all been created by the black mud. However, after taking out Wu Ming and young Gil, as well as the 7 class cards that had been brought to the world of Ilya, they had all been baptized by the Holy Grail known as Mayu, purifying all of these class cards, and the negative effects that corroded one's heart and body had all disappeared. That was what Wu Ming was doing now. Eliminate all the negative effects that corrode the user's body inside the card. Although Wu Ming was not the Holy Grail, in terms of spiritual purification, Wu Ming's noble phantasm, the nameless spellbook, had a lot of spells in this area. Although the two are somewhat different, it should work, Wu Ming said to himself. In the past, what if, noble and powerful, wise and kind, I will become a double miracle and lead the world to the dawn. Wu Ming directly activated the power of double authority. In this way, the purification of the negative effects of the class card should be foolproof. After all, it was the power of a god, and a mere class card couldn't compete with it at all. Wu Ming placed the nameless spellbook on the table, and opened it casually. Wu Ming took the class card and placed the class card on the nameless spellbook. The class card automatically floated above the nameless spellbook. He didn't even need to chant an incantation. The nameless spellbook automatically activated with Wu Ming's thoughts, and began to purify the class cards. As expected, it's because of the black mud. Wu Ming felt the analysis of the class card and frowned. Fortunately, I'm not the same as I used to be after returning to the root. Wu Ming smirked. After that, Wu Ming injected an unknown power into the nameless spellbook. Like an ordinary object touching sulfuric acid, the class card made a sizzling sound. Then, a small black gas floated out of the class card and disappeared into nothingness. Done. Wu Ming grabbed the class card. Excessive amounts of ice would seal the flames in the body and extinguish them. However, for the endless flames, a little bit of ice was nothing. It would melt, evaporate, and turn into nothingness. Julian must have realized my return, Wu Ming said thoughtfully. I have to hurry. With the sound of the door closing, Wu Ming left the room. Winterwood City, Big Hollow, Ainsworth Castle. A sloppy middle-aged man with messy hair and thin clothes stood at the highest point of the castle, looking at the scenery in the distance. If one looked closely, one would find that the man's eyes were filled with fanaticism and darkness. Thud. This was the sound of a person half kneeling on the ground. The man didn't turn his head and spoke directly. It seems like you've lost completely, Angelica Beatrice. The man said with a deep feeling. However, no matter how one listened, one could tell that the owner of the voice was not in a good mood. I'm sorry, Master Darius, we've failed, Angelica said calmly. She was not upset or worried about the failure of the mission. That was right. These two people were Angelica and Beatrice, who Wu Ming thought had no chance of surviving. Although both of them survived Wu Ming's attack, Beatrice was worried about whether she could survive the attack of Master Ainsworth. Beatrice, who was beside Angelica, didn't dare to speak. Beatrice was just like Angelica, half kneeling on the ground, but she didn't say a word. After all, Beatrice was not a pure puppet. She accepted the rank card to become Ainsworth's combat power voluntarily. Because of the effect of Hercules' noble phantasm, Beatrice only fell into a state of suspended animation, so she was not brainwashed by Darius. He did not want those who died to be deprived of emotions and placed on puppets. After all, the other party really volunteered to help him, so there was no need to spend energy to convert them. Mama, I can't blame you. I didn't expect Hyunryong to really resurrect beside our princess, Darius said with joy. The evil dragon that kidnapped the princess. How can a mere soldier bring the princess back? This needs to be done by a brave prince. What do you think? Ha 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 ha. Ha 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 ha. Looking at Darius, who was laughing like a lunatic, Angelica and Beatrice did not speak anymore. One felt that there was no need to speak, and the other was too scared to speak. For a moment, Darius stopped laughing, then said calmly to Angelica, "Inform those puppets that the enemy is coming." Yes, Master Darius. Chapter 288. On the same day, Wu Ming helped Mayu and Ilya learn how to use Dream Summon and Stall. He also guided Xiaohei while he was at it. Originally, this task should have been given to Shiro Emiya. However, Sakura Madu was worried that Shiro Amiya wouldn't be able to get out of bed. Even the food was personally delivered by Sakura Madu to Shiro Amiya's room. According to Wuming's deduction, he found out that Shiro Amiya was also being fed by Sakura Madu. After all, Wuming could be considered as half a mentor to Shiro Amiya. Although he couldn't use the moves of his disciple, he could still give some pointers to Xiaohei. Subsequently, Xiaohei successfully developed a skill that could be considered a new ability, which made Xiaohei very excited. After that, Wuming made glutinous rice balls for the three of them, making 3 smiling faces and 3 different types of laughter accompany Wuming. After that, Wuming took some free time to find Rin Enbin and Livia. Wuming brought them to the room in the center of the Shuasuki residence, and folded the space to reveal the control room. After seeing all this, the people who were originally interested in the control room, including Rin Enbin and Livia, were all shocked. Although this isn't a secret, the control room is also the core of my magic workshop. You two must be obedient and don't cause any trouble. This was Wuming's advice to Rin Enbin and Livia, whose eyes were shining when they saw the control room. Okay. Of course, Wuming wouldn't easily believe that the two wouldn't drop the ball at a critical moment. Therefore, Wuming left Kalas behind as an assistant to Rin Enbin and Livia. In addition to supervising Rin Enbin and Livia, Kalas had another important task, which was to assist the two in the construction of the magic workshop. After all, this was Kanzaki's shrine. Even if Wuming simplified it to modern technology, the two of them wouldn't be able to learn how to use it in a single day. That night, after dinner, everyone gathered in the conference room again. As usual, Wuming sat at the head of the table, while the others sat on either side of him. Young Gil sat in the middle. Everyone, go to sleep later and conserve your strength. Angelica and Beatrice did not come back. Ainsworth must be able to infer that I am back. Maybe the other party will attack directly regardless of the safety of the Winterwood citizens. Directly? Directly launch an attack. Isn't magic supposed to be hidden and not be known to ordinary people? Will Ainsworth really break this rule? Ilya had been in the magic world for a long time, so she already understood a lot of these rules. Although this world had experienced the experience of almost being destroyed, with the help of Zelik, this world successfully escaped from destruction. Even so, the world's population had decreased to a certain extent, and even now, Winterwood City had not fully recovered to its former prosperity. But the people were not afraid. It was just that the population base had decreased, and they still continued to live. Ainsworth's goal is the Holy Grail. Let's not talk about whether they know that May came back with me. With Ainsworth's idea, as long as they get rid of me, no one can stop them from getting the Holy Grail. Wuming explained. When this world was gradually approaching destruction, the magicians from all over the world were the first victims. As the saying goes, if the sky falls, the tall man will hold it up. After the magicians lost a lot of their lives, Zelik spent a lot of effort to resolve the crisis of this world. As for what the crisis was, Wuming didn't know, nor was he interested in knowing. He only knew that because of the decrease in magicians, the Ainsworth family on the other side of the world had become the local tyrant. This was also the reason why the large pit on the side of Winterwood City had not been repaired for 5 years. I can only say that we can't eliminate the possibility of an attack at night. After all, I have already discovered that they are monitoring this place. Wuming said calmly. Let's leave it at that for the time being. Everyone go to sleep. If nothing unexpected happens, we will attack Ainsworth tomorrow morning. After Wuming finished speaking, everyone looked at each other and nodded. Night fell, and Wuming looked in the direction of Ainsworth. With a golden light, young Gil appeared beside Wuming. Why are you here? Good boy, you still need to sleep. Wuming looked at young Gil casually. Ha ha ha, teacher is so gentle. Wuming's words made young Gil laugh. I'm actually here to tell you that I sense the aura of my upper body. As soon as young Gil said that, Wuming's body trembled, but he reacted quickly. Both of them came back alive? They are so lucky. Wuming squinted his eyes and looked at young Gil. Then, I'll give you your upper body. How about that? Young Gil, on the other hand, smiled gently. Teacher, you must be joking. Although it's my lower body, it has most of my relics. Of course, I know how powerful I am. You want your lower body, right, Gil? Wuming suddenly said. Yes, of course. Of course, I want to be complete. Young Gil said as if it was a matter of course. Now, I suddenly realized that you were the most difficult to deal with when you were young. Wuming suddenly sighed. He relaxed his aura that was always ready. As if he was on vacation, Wuming lay on the roof. After becoming an adult, Gilgamesh was extremely arrogant and complacent. Before becoming an adult, Gilgamesh was gentle and elegant. He always kept his cool, compared to the guy in front of him who always had a smile and was always calm. Wuming felt that the arrogant and complacent Gilgamesh was easier to talk to. I really hate myself after growing up. I really don't understand why I became like that. Young Gil also put down his smile and returned to his original posture. He leaned against Wuming and sat down. Really, wouldn't it have been better if you were like this earlier? You made both of us so troublesome. Young Gil was like a real child as he casually said to Wuming. Who told you to stare at Mayu so aggressively from the beginning, you idiot? Wuming said as he cursed and hit young Gil's head. I can't help it. After all, my heart has always wanted to obtain the Holy Grail. The Holy Grail is right in front of me. How could I give it up? After all, Wuming did not use much strength. Young Gil only touched his head symbolically, and then chatted with Wuming. That's right. Although the two of them had a good relationship as master and disciple, they always seemed to treat each other as outsiders. That was because both of them were pretending. Then, what made you give up on Mayu? Wuming asked young Gil in a tone that said he already knew the answer. You really have a bad taste. You clearly know the reason, yet you still ask me. Young Gil looked helplessly at Wuming. Wuming did not mind young Gil's words. He smiled and looked at the sky without saying anything. That's right. No matter what, Wuming was like Gilgamesh's adoptive father. Even if it was the Gilgamesh of the parallel world. How could Wuming not understand him? Chapter 289. As early as when Wuming and young Gil noticed that there were enemies coming to the parallel world, young Gil had already noticed that half of his body was missing. Originally, I just wanted to destroy them in another world. That way, your body wouldn't be able to come back. Wuming looked at the sky and confessed to young Gil. Of course I know. You were there at that time. You definitely wouldn't allow me to get my body back, so I didn't ask for much. Young Gil helplessly waved his hand. But they came back alive. Isn't this what people often say about fate? That's it. I'll help you get your body back. You're not allowed to have any ideas about Mayu and the others. Wuming glanced at young Gil. In modern terms, you're really a lolicon. Young Gil laughed heartily. That's it. Don't you want the Holy Grail? I'll give you one. Suddenly Wuming said. Huh. You don't let me have any ideas about Sister Mayu and the others, but you want to give me the Holy Grail? So, where is the Holy Grail that you want to give me? Young Gil was puzzled. You also know that since the fall of the Uruk dynasty, I didn't die. Wuming did not directly tell young Gil where the Holy Grail was. Instead, he talked about his own experience with young Gil. I once went to a world. In that world, there was a different kind of Holy Grail war. Oh, a different kind of Holy Grail war? Young Gil showed great interest. Yes, it was a Holy Grail war with 14 servants. The black side and the red side. Each had 7 servants. The black side launched a defensive battle in order to hold the Holy Grail that was already in their hands. The red side launched a siege in order to compete for the Holy Grail that was protected by the black side. Wuming continued to look at the starry sky and spoke leisurely without turning his head. First, Black's saber committed suicide, and Red's berserker was captured. Then, Black's rider rebelled with an android and became neutral. Red's saber left the main force, and Black's assassin went out of control. Together with the additional supervisor ruler, and the cheating servant ruler, who survived the previous Holy Grail war, they launched an unprecedented Holy Grail war. Ha ha ha, that sounds like a pretty good show. Even I want to see these clowns. Young Gil laughed with great interest. And then? Who took the Holy Grail in the end? Young Gil asked impatiently. Wuming smiled at this. Of course it's me, your teacher. Ha ha ha, I knew it. In this world, only the two of us are qualified to possess the Holy Grail. Those clowns are really overestimating themselves. Young Gil wiped the tears from his laughter and looked at Wuming apologetically. Sorry, teacher, it's really funny. So, do you mean to give me the Holy Grail of the Holy Grail War? I originally thought so, but, Wuming said slowly. But, I regret it, my disciple. As if he was playing with young Gil, Wuming said happily. Is that so? It's similar to what I guessed, but it doesn't matter. Young Gil, who originally had a desire for the Holy Grail, now seemed to have entered sage mode. Young Gil also lay down next to Wuming. The Holy Grail is just a desire. I'm now interested in the Holy Grail War you mentioned. When I get back my real body, I'll go to the parallel world to try my luck and see if I can encounter it. After all, there are parallel worlds where the 14 Nights' War happened. Even if you're my teacher, I won't accept your charity, young Gil said with a domineering tone. That's right, in young Gil's view, the so-called cooperation now was just young Gil's one-sided weakness. Even if he got back his real body and recovered all his strength, Gilgamesh and Hyenryong could still fight to a draw. In this way, the Holy Grail was charity. You really haven't changed, Gil. Wuming touched young Gil's head and said with some surprise. What do you mean haven't changed? This king has never changed, okay? Young Gil slapped Wuming's hand away in disdain. Do you think Ainsworth will come tonight? Wuming suddenly asked. Isn't that obvious? Young Gil said with some disdain. The clowns are always the first to appear, teacher. Wuming and young Gil sat up and looked at the street not far from the Shoyu residence. A black figure flashed from there. Assassin, it seems that the other party can't wait. It seems that this is the other party's vanguard. Wuming raised his arm and slid it gently, and a screen appeared in front of Wuming. On the screen, the assassin in a black robe and a skull mask was constantly moving toward here. Vanguard? I think it's cannon fodder. Young Gil smiled. Hassan, I just don't know which Hassan it is, but it doesn't matter. Wuming obviously recognized the true identity of this assassin. It couldn't be helped, Hassan was too easy to recognize. Maybe it's one of the dozen Hassans. It doesn't matter. After all, it's just a clown among clowns. Young Gil waved his hand casually. You're right. Wuming smiled as well. At that moment, Hassan, who was approaching the Shoyu residence, suddenly stopped and dodged to the side. However, a sharp arrow that was comparable to a C-grade relic was shot at the assassin, piercing through his head. Somewhere in the Shoyu residence, a transparent ripple appeared and disappeared. Needless to say, the arrow that was comparable to a C-grade relic was shot out from the transparent ripple. Then the assassin collapsed on the ground. The magic in his body began to burn, and eventually he turned into an automaton. A card fell on the ground, but strangely, the card turned into ashes along with the user and disappeared with the wind. It seems like this is a one-time use card. Has Ainsworth learned his lesson? Wuming flew up and said to young Gil. So Gil, can you help me call everyone? Of course, teacher. Young Gil disappeared from the roof with a flash of golden particles. Wuming came to the courtyard of the Shoyu residence and inserted one hand into the ground. Spacefold expand. After a while, Elia was woken up by Mayu and put on her clothes. Mayu, are the enemies here? Ilya rubbed her sleepy eyes and looked at Mayu. Yes, Sister Rin asked me to wake you up. They have all gathered. Brother Wuming found the enemy's tracks. We have to prepare in advance. After that, Mayu pulled Ilya toward the courtyard of the Shoyu residence. Why do they have to come at this time? Damn it, it's like sleeping. Mayu turned her head and comforted Ilya. Don't worry, Ilya. Brother Wuming is here. When the preparations are complete, you can go and sleep for a while. I will call you again. No need, Mayu. After all, the enemy has already attacked. It's better to be serious. Ilya waved her hand awkwardly. Speaking of which, why haven't we reached the end after walking for so long? Mayu had been pulling Ilya for a while. Ilya discovered that they still hadn't reached the courtyard. Could it be ghosts? Ilya's expression instantly became flustered. Unfortunately, Ilya's whimsical theory was denied. No, It's Wu Ming who expanded the folded space of the Shoyu residence. That's why we haven't reached the end after walking for so long. Meiyu shook her head. That's right, Iliya-chan. You are obviously a magical girl. How can you be afraid of ghosts? With me here, Iliya-chan can catch ghosts. Ruby's sleepy voice came out from Ilya's hair. You lazy bug. It's time to get up. Stop talking. Ilya ridiculed Ruby. Sister, come out quickly. The enemy has arrived. Sapphire, who had already come out from Meiyu's hair, floated behind Ilya's head and said to Ruby hidden in her hair. Yes, I'll come out now. Ruby said somewhat unwillingly. We're here. Meiyu stopped and pushed open the door to the courtyard. This is... Chapter 290. Ilya's eyes widened when she saw the scene in the courtyard. She was speechless. The courtyard that was originally several dozen square meters had exceeded Ilya's calculations. It was so big that she couldn't even see the end. Ilya estimated that it was several thousand square meters. In this several thousand square meters courtyard, there were huge steel golems that were more than 3 meters tall. They were like an orderly army that was arranged in an orderly manner. These steel puppets were like high-tech robots. Just one of them was enough for Ilya to sense danger, not to mention the countless puppets in the courtyard. These are. Ilya didn't dare to speak. Meiyu, Ilya, why are you two so late? We're just waiting for you two. Little Black waved at Ilya and Meiyu, who had just arrived. Ilya and Meiyu hurriedly ran over. Sorry, Little Black. The space inside the house after unfolding the spatial folding is a little large. I spent some time bringing Ilya. Meiyu apologized to Little Black. You don't have to apologize for such a small matter. Speaking of which, could it be that Ilya was lazing in bed and couldn't get up? That's why you're late, right? Little Black looked at Ilya with a gaze that seemed to see through everything. How is that possible? Little Black, why would I laze in bed? Ah. Ilya touched the back of her head and laughed. In fact, Little Black wasn't wrong. Is that so? Don't forget that we used to be one body. I basically know all your habits, Ilya. Wait a minute, I didn't. Little Black's words caused Ilya to stutter and become speechless. Stop fooling around, you two. Let's get down to business. Rin Enbin said to the two who were teasing and being teased. He instantly glared at Little Black. Blackie, on the other hand, turned his head away while whistling. Everyone looked at Wu Ming attentively. Beside Wu Ming, who had his eyes closed, a black teleportation door opened. Another steel golem walked out. It walked to a fixed position and stood there steadily. Then Wu Ming opened his eyes. That should be enough. Then Wu Ming began to chant. Under the night sky, under the brilliance of the light, form an ancient covenant with me. Here, thy body belongs to us, and we govern thy body. Gods of darkness and light, form a covenant here. As the words were uttered, the ground of the lunar manor began to change. First, it was mixed with a trace of golden light. Then, like a swamp, the ground slowly swallowed the countless iron golems standing on the ground. Only when all the steel golems had disappeared did the earth return to its original state. Were all these steel men swallowed by the earth? Ilya was a little surprised. Don't worry. Wu Ming walked up to Ilya and rubbed her little head. The color of the earth just now was the effect of my noble phantasm. Now they are staying in my noble phantasm, waiting for my summons. That's right, what Wu Ming just used was one of the uses of his kin avatar. Originally, that avatar was originally Mecker's ability to summon locusts to devour everything. Combined with Wu Ming's own evolution, that ability became the ability to summon his avatar. But even if it evolved, the original ability would not disappear, and it still had the effect of summoning creatures. However, because Wu Ming and the locust's attributes were not compatible, there was nothing in Wu Ming's kin space that required Wu Ming to find creatures who volunteered to be Wu Ming's summoned creatures to fill in the space. Compared to living creatures with flesh and blood, Wu Ming was more inclined to these golems without self-consciousness. That was what happened just now. Wu Ming summoned the strongest steel golem in Nazalik's kin space. After entering Wu Ming's noble phantasm, Those steel golems would automatically become Wu Ming's summoned creatures, because they were unconscious. As long as Wu Ming activated his dependent incarnation, and didn't transmit his aura to that incarnation, then all those magic puppets would have the power to restrain the black mud. Of course, the other side would also have the power to restrain this side. In short, both sides restrained each other. Let's go, everyone, the other side has begun to move. In order to avoid affecting the city, I decided to attack the other side's base directly. Everyone nodded. Immediately afterward, Wu Ming, Shiro Amiya, Sakura Madu, Gil, and Bazette left Shoasuki House together. Rin and Osaka, Livia, Ilya Mayu and Xiaohei stayed in Shoasuki House. Let's go, Ms. Rin, Ms. Livia, let's quickly activate the Master's Temple, and go to the other side's base. Kala suddenly appeared behind Rin and Osaka and Livia without any warning and said, "Ah." Rin and Osaka and Livia were both startled. After seeing Kalas, who was of the same race as Ruby and Sapphire, they both calmed down. I know, let's go. It's improper to scare a lady." Rin and Osaka and Livia complained, and went to the control room. "Then let's go and prepare." Xiaohei began to move. "Wait a minute, Blackie. Didn't Brother Wu Ming tell us to stay here obediently?" Ilya looked at Blackie, wanting to say something but hesitating. Xiaohei turned his head away with a look of disdain. "Should I say that you're a fool or an idiot? Big Brother did tell us to stay here as obediently as possible, but there are always accidents. We have to be prepared. If Big Brother and the others can't win for a while, we can go and help." Xiaohei turned his head and looked at Mayu. Mayu would agree with me. Mayu, who didn't expect Xiaohei to ask her, was startled at first, but then she reacted. It's not impossible to prepare a little. Back then, when Wu Ming asked the three of them to stay in Shoasuki House, Mayu was still a little angry. She became a magical girl. Other than to collect class cards, she also wanted to increase her power and help Wu Ming. Although Mayu was a good girl, good girls also had a stubborn side. "Ilya, let's go and prepare just in case." Looking at Mayu's determined eyes, Ilya didn't know what to do and nodded. Then all right, let's go. If we help Big Brother later, we can ask for a reward. Xiaohei pushed the two of them and started to tempt them. "Xiaohei, don't push me away." "Reward." Ignoring Ilya's cry of surprise, Xiaohei saw that Mayu had fallen into his trap and immediately spoke. That's right. Don't you want Big Brother to kiss you? I missed that night very much." As he spoke, Xiaohei pretended to be seductive and tempted the two of them. That night? Mayu was stunned. Not pure. "Xiaohei, you're a girl. You have to be reserved, understand?" Yes. Let's go. Chapter 291. Outside the Winterwood City Pit, Wu Ming and his group came here. "Let's stop here for the time being." Wu Ming waved his hand and motioned for the group to stop moving forward. "So do we need to attack directly, teacher?" Young Gil put his hands behind his head and said in a relaxed and casual tone, "No need, the other party has already noticed that we are here." Wu Ming shook his head. "They are already at the door. How can the other party not notice that someone is coming?" Wu Ming looked at the empty pit with a sarcastic expression. "Still so pretentious, Ainsworth. Is displacement magic really so omnipotent?" Just after Wu Ming finished speaking, there was a slight change in the center of the big pit. Accompanied by spatial fluctuations, figures came out of the ripples one by one. Darius led Angelica, Beatrice, and a few strangers who had no consciousness in their eyes to walk out. "Long time no see, Mr. Wu Ming." Darius greeted Wu Ming gently. Julian is not here?" Shiro Amiya saw that Julian was not among the people who came out of the ripples and spoke subconsciously. "Calm down, Shiro. I will tell you about Julian later." Wu Ming knew that although Julian had already broken up with Weigong Shiro, the things that happened between the two in the school before, and the friendship that developed between them, were all real. With Shiro Amiya's character, it was difficult for him to completely let go of Julian. After Shiro Amiya heard Wu Ming's words, he nodded and said nothing. He knew that this was a battlefield now. Looking back, Wu Ming looked at Darius. "Well, long time no see, Darius. Ming also responded gently with a smile. People who didn't know might think that the two were best friends who hadn't seen each other for many years. This is really fate. I remember the last time we met like this. Darius touched his chin with one hand and supported the hand that was touching his chin with the other hand as he thought carefully. You are really forgetful, Darius. The one who met me was your son, Julian Ainsworth. Yes, look at my memory, ha ha ha. In the face of Ming's mistake, Darius clenched one fist and punched the other hand with a look of, I forgot to thank you for the reminder. After laughing for a moment, Darius said, then the greetings are almost done. After Darius finished speaking, the few people behind him walked in front of Darius in unison. Their eyes were lifeless like robots. Same to you. Ming narrowed his eyes. Come and see my latest card, Hyenryong-sama. Darius bowed deeply to Ming like a noble. However, to be honest, it was really disgusting. Install Dream Summon. Each of the dolls took out a class card and activated Dream Summoning. They stuck the class card on their bodies. Boom. Following their Dream Summon, a large amount of magical power erupted and impacted the surroundings. Every golem was wrapped in a huge pillar of light. The tornadoes created by the magic pillars kept blowing in the direction of Ming and the others. Ming and the others' clothes fluttered. Brother. Shiro Amiya took a step forward and said to Ming with a serious expression, Don't worry, Shiro. Ming stopped Shiro Amiya, who was a little emotional, and said, Let's see what the other party is up to. In fact, Ming was worried that Darius had made a few class cards with special abilities. After all, the level of a noble phantasm was not the most important thing, but whether it could restrain a noble phantasm. Many times, a low-level noble phantasm could restrain many high-level noble phantasms. It was just like the relationship between Shakespeare and Joan of Arc in the Battle of 14 Nights that Ming participated in. Shakespeare said it himself. We don't have the ability to fight. We can only pick up a pen and write to record this tragedy. She didn't know magic at all. She didn't have any skill in making props, and she could only build her own study room. She was a third-rate servant with no actual combat ability, but she was able to restrain Joan of Arc by relying on her noble phantasm. There should be a thunderous applause here. Fortunately, the aftermath of the battle between Ming and Karna affected Shakespeare and Joan of Arc at that time. Otherwise, it would be terrible. However, Ming estimated that with Joan of Arc's EX level of magical power, coupled with her unusually strong spirit. Having said that, faith was really a scary thing. For faith, Tianqiao lived for 60 years. For faith, Joan of Arc endured the first few rounds of spiritual destruction before Ming broke Shakespeare's noble phantasm. Sure enough, faith was the way to go. Ahem, let's get back to the topic. Moreover, not only noble phantasms, but even servants had restraints. If Zhou Yu and Zhuge Liang appeared in the same Holy Grail war, Zhou Yu would be restrained by Zhuge Liang. The noble phantasm was sublimated from the legends of his life, so the cause of Zhou Yu's death, which was being controlled by Zhuge Liang, would definitely accompany him. Just like Karen's death rate when encountering something related to poison, it would greatly increase. Although Ming didn't think that anyone could restrain him, it was difficult to guarantee that Shiro Amiya and the others would not be restrained. Don't worry, everyone. These cards are not targeted at your noble phantasm. These are just cannon fodder used in the battle. Darius saw the concerns of Ming and the others, so he didn't care about the card-using puppets and spoke directly. You might as well send out your Black Mud Servant army. A group of guys without self-awareness. There's nothing to worry about. Ming laughed. Ming was not underestimating the enemy. That was the truth. No matter what they are, just wash them all away. God says humans are sinful. God says humans need to be purified. So send the monstrous flood to my body. In the name of the Supreme King, I will grant equal relief. As the spirit of speech finished speaking, the sky above Darius and the others seemed to be torn apart, and a hole was broken in space. Countless streams of water gushed out from this gap. However, when it was about to touch Darius and the others, a large purple magic array appeared and caught the water. Then a purple virtual frame gap appeared above Ming and the others. The water that Wu Ming summoned was used by Darius in turn, directly replacing the space of two places? I have to say, the Ainsworth family's displacement magic is really the pinnacle of magic. Wu Ming praised the displacement magic. Thank you for your praise. Darius seemed to be proud of it and bowed to Wu Ming again. But my things are not so easy to control. The water that fell on Wu Ming and the others automatically dispersed when it was about to touch Wu Ming and the others. It fell to the ground and slowly flowed into the big pit. Because Wu Ming and the others were on a higher ground, and Darius and the others were on a lower ground, the water naturally flowed into the big pit. It seems that the substitution magic isn't working anymore. Darius laughed self-deprecatingly. Chapter 292. At this moment, the inside of the big pit in Winterwood City was filled with water. Only Wu Ming and the others were at the top of the big pit, and Darius and the others were at the center of the big pit, protected by displacement magic. Oh, Qianryong, Sama, I didn't expect you to have such a godlike ability. Did you hide it last time? Darius said with a little excitement. Sorry, I didn't hide it. It's okay to tell you. This is a new ability I got from killing the gods of other worlds. Wu Ming answered Darius's question quite casually. God. Is that true, big brother? Wei Gongshi looked at his elder brother with an even more unusual gaze. Not only was Wei Gongshi like this, even Tong Ying and Bizet had a doubtful look on their faces. Only young Gil was quite excited. Good job, sensei. When will you kill those gods of Sumer mythology? Young Jill said such terrifying words with his beautiful face. Wu Ming didn't say anything about it. Not only Wu Ming knew, but young Gil also knew that the original gods were forced to enter a higher dimension after Kanagami's generation, and they could no longer interfere with the operation of the main world. In a sense, those gods were dead and killed by the world. Since Qianryong, Sama has already made his move, then we can't be weak. With that said, Darius waved his hand, and one of the people who had completed the transformation using the class card raised the bow in his hand. The bow in his hand was very simple, and he was wearing a simple leather armor. He looked abnormally energetic, but his eyes, which were called the soul of a person, were very turbid. The puppet man received Darius's command, and like a machine, he drew the bow and arrow and aimed at the sky. Stella. The puppet man said softly without emotion, then released the bowstring, and the arrow flew to the sky. PFFF. After shooting the arrow, the man's body shattered into pieces. Then he turned into a broken automaton, and an archer class card turned into ashes. Is it a relic that will be thrown away once it's used? Wu Ming could tell that his opponent had to sacrifice himself to use the relic. As expected of Ainsworth, such a relic was usually quite powerful. Wu Ming raised his head to look at the arrow. After reaching the highest point, the arrow began to descend. As it descended, the power of the arrow increased bit by bit. With Wu Ming's senses, he could tell that once the arrow landed on the ground, it would explode with boundless power that could tear the earth apart. Shiro used Roajax to protect the two of them. Wu Ming made a prompt decision and asked Shiro Amiya to use his defensive relic. I don't need to worry about you. Then Wu Ming looked at young Gil. Of course, at least I still have the ability to protect myself. Young Gil flicked his hair and waved his hand casually. That's it then. Immediately, Wu Ming took a step forward. Lightning. 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 I am the conqueror who can defeat 1,000 with 1,000, and 10,000 with 10,000. Now for me, who is on the side of justice, please shine brightly, and give me divine power. Thou hast violated the contract and brought evil to the world. On the Lord's day, the sinner shall be punished. Crush his back, dig out his tendons, bones, hair, and brain, and trample on his blood and mud. If I am the one who cannot get close to the darkness, I will follow the Lord's words and destroy thee. In an instant, Wu Ming cancelled his flood incarnation, and activated his thunder god incarnation, and annihilation incarnation. Beep beep beep. Wu Ming's body began to flicker with red lightning that was so red it was frightening. Actually, if you dodge now, you should be able to avoid this noble phantasm. Young Gil kindly reminded him. That made Wu Ming laugh. If it's you, will you dodge it? Wu Ming asked. Of course not, as a king. There's no need to dodge an unknown clown's noble phantasm. Young Gil shook his head. I'm the same, my disciple. As the teacher of the ancient king, Wu Ming also had a trace of similarity with Gilgamesh. Wu Ming would directly trigger certain things that could be avoided. The unknown was what Wu Ming had always been searching for. That was also one of the points. However, Wu Ming was not an enemy that he would fight head-on. Otherwise, in Uruk, Wu Ming would not have left with Enkidu, but Wu Ming would have fought directly. At that time, although Wu Ming had not yet grown up, and his talent and physical fitness as the root dragon were still very poor, Wu Ming could still fight against these gods at the cost of his vitality. After all, Wu Ming was also the root dragon, and he had the strength to do so. In less than 50 years, Wu Ming was able to successfully awaken the root dragon's body from an ordinary boy to the point where he could kill gods. That was all thanks to the root dragon's bloodline. That was both a price and a benefit. They sacrificed the strength that other higher life forms were born with in exchange for unprecedented growth in just 50 or even 40 years. This might be the reason why the origin of origins, dragons were able to become peak existences that roamed the various worlds. However, Wu Ming seemed to have added the convenience provided by the root dragon's bloodline to his luck. In addition, Wu Ming did not dodge for the sake of Winterwood City. Judging by Wu Ming's naked eye, the arrow that was about to fall from the sky definitely had the power to blow up Winterwood City. Not to mention that Rin Dosaka and the others were still in Winterwood City. Wu Ming still had the attitude of saving the ordinary people if he could. If he was rich, he would help the world. If he was poor, he would take care of himself. That was the truth. Since I can't dodge, then I'll just melt this arrow that's comparable to a meteor. With that said, Wu Ming's lightning burst out and condensed into a lightning beam. It will crush all enemies and enmity, both humans and demons. Wu Ming chanted the Thunder God's Incarnation's enhancement rune, which was a special spirit that could instantly enhance the power of the incarnation. This is my body. Boom. The red lightning pillar rushed straight towards the huge source of mana that was descending from the sky. When the two collided, an earth-shattering sound rang out. The white light covered everything, leaving only the residual sound of the explosion, and the violent wind caused by the collision of the authority and the noble phantasm. Chapter 293. When the light gradually disappeared, everyone opened their eyes. The strong hurricane caused by the collision of the relics caused the dust in the air to scatter. As the two relics collided and exploded in mid-air, it did not affect Winterwood City much. However, some of the flowers on the balcony and the signs on the street were blown off. Wu Ming used his magic to disperse the dust that was wrapped around his body. Behind Wu Ming, a purplish-red cherry blossom shield appeared in the shape of a ball, protecting the people inside. The cherry blossom shield turned into pure magic and dissipated, revealing Shiro Amiya, Sakura Madu, and Bazette. As for young Gil, he did not need anyone to protect him. Are you guys okay? Wu Ming turned around and asked. We're fine. What about you, big brother? Just now the Ro Ajax didn't manage to protect you. Although it was said that it did not protect him, it was actually Wu Ming's request. If everyone lost their vision, it would be dangerous. Moreover, Wu Ming also needed to deal with any attacks that might come back other than Stella, which was why he wasn't protected by the 7 blazing circles, Ro Ajax. My relic and the opponent's relic cancelled each other out. The only thing that was generated was a super strong storm. This wind is nothing to me. Wu Ming waved his hand, indicating that he was fine. If it was just the gust of wind that was stirred up just now, that little bit of power was nothing to Wu Ming. That was a terrifying attack just now. Bazette said with lingering fear. That's right. If the attack just now landed, let's not talk about whether I could protect you guys, the entire Winterwood City would disappear. Shiro Amiya agreed. What? What is that? At that moment, Sakura Madu suddenly pointed to the front and asked. Shiro Amiya and Bazette also looked to the front. Wu Ming was the first to discover it. A semicircular defensive wall, like an ice castle, covered the original location of Darius and the others. After the light produced by the explosion disappeared, Wuming discovered this water blue ice prison that did not match the sand and dust on the battlefield. Wuming raised his eyebrows and stretched his hand to the side. The golden ripples wrapped around Wuming's right arm. Then, as if he was holding on to something, Wuming suddenly pulled his hand out of the golden ripples. The silver spear of the world tree appeared in Wuming's hand. Yggdrasil's vines were quite effective against the tortoise shell. My Yggdrasil. Along with the activation of the relic, the Yggdrasil spear was covered in green. Green vines grew from the body of the spear to the tip of the spear. Wuming maintained Yggdrasil's real name liberation status and changed his posture into a throwing position. He aimed at the ice prison and threw it hard. Xiao dash. Yggdrasil penetrated the atmosphere and made a sound that broke through the sound barrier. Boom. The ice prison that the World Tree Divine Spear had fiercely attached to exploded violently, and countless vines grew out of the ice prison in a frenzy. A big hole was broken in the ice prison. Swish, swish, swish. Yggdrasil, who completed the task, returned to Wuming's hand and was firmly grasped by Wuming. Wuming put Yggdrasil back into the golden ripples and looked at Darius and the others in the ice prison. Your tortoise shell is not very good, Darius. Ha ha ha, Henryong-sama, you must be joking. Your spear has the ability to break through this relic. Darius was right. If one looked carefully, the vines triggered by Wuming's relic were all from the inside of the ice prison. No, it should be from the ice of the ice prison to the outside, just like a plant bud growing out of a stone. When Darius touched the relic, the ice prison turned into a rank card and he held it in his hand. 301 seconds Eternal Ice Palace. That's the name of this relic. What do you think? Not bad, right? Darius took the class card and showed it to Wuming and the others. Unfortunately, the class card did not have a class, nor any picture. 301 seconds Eternal Ice Palace? Young Gil frowned. What's wrong, Gil? Wuming looked at young Gil. In my memories and my treasury, there is no such precious artifact. Wuming certainly understood what young Gil meant. As the ancient king, Gilgamesh's Gate of Babylon contained almost all the prototypes of relic. As long as there was a relic that appeared before, it could be found in Gilgamesh's treasury. However, young Jill said that she had never heard of this 301-second Eternal Ice Palace, which was quite thought-provoking. It may also happen to be a relic that was not included in my Gate of Babylon, but the probability is somewhat unbelievable. Although the Gate of Babylon contained almost all the prototypes of relic, it was inevitable that there would be some left out. Almost all of them meant that it was not absolute. It was very likely that this relic was not included in Gilgamesh's treasury. But I don't believe that he would have a noble artifact that you don't have in your Gate of Babylon. Wuming looked at Darius again, who had a smile on his face. Maybe this is a relic that Darius created himself. Shiro Amiya, Sakura Madu, and Bazette all widened their eyes. Created his own relic. Is this really possible for modern people? Sakura Madu covered her mouth in disbelief. Well, after all, the one next to you has the ability to create relic. Wuming pointed at Bazette. Is Ms. Bazette so powerful? Sakura Madu looked at Bazette in surprise. Shiro Amiya also looked at this rather cold partner of his in a new light. Although I can create the backlight sword, it is entirely because I am the descendant of the inheritance germ protector family. Compared to your man who has begun to heroic spirit, I am still far behind. Bazette closed her eyes and said calmly to Sakura Madu. On the other hand, Tong Ying and Wei Gong Shiro's faces turned red. Wuming did not pay attention to the conversation between Shiro Amiya and the others. Instead, he looked at Darius, who had a new move. Well, since Sir Virtuous Dragon was able to break this precious artifact so easily, then these few cards are just showing off in front of an expert. As he spoke, Darius took out 2 more job rank cards without any pictures. Next, let's start the real stage performance, Henryong-sama. After that, Darius walked into the transparent ripple behind him. Coincidentally, a large amount of black mud was constantly emerging from the transparent ripple. Zizi. Woo. Wuming. I've connected. Suddenly, a virtual screen appeared next to Wuming. On the screen were Kalis Rin Enbin, and Livia, whose cheeks were red and swollen. Chapter 294. What did you two do just now? Wuming asked curiously when he saw that their cheeks were a little red. Nothing, nothing. Ahaha. Yeah, ha. Rin and Osaka and Livia waved their hands in a panic, then stared at each other fiercely. How could they say that they were slapped by each other, because they were fighting for the master position? Kalis bowed to Wuming. Master, due to the sudden explosion of a large amount of magic, our communication was temporarily disrupted, but it's fine now. Wuming nodded. The large amount of magic that Kalis was talking about should be the chaos caused by the collision of the relics. We're on our way to your location. We'll be there in about 5 minutes. Okay, I understand. Kalis, remember to keep an eye on these two. Don't let them cause any trouble. Wuming was still worried about Rin and Osaka and Livia. Yes, master. Kalis then turned off the communication. Wuming looked once again at the black mud that had already begun to spread, and at the few card users who were already rushing over. Shiro, Sakura, Bazette, start attacking the enemy. Remember not to touch the black mud, and protect yourselves first. Wuming noticed that the moment the black mud appeared, except for the puppets that had no self-consciousness, Angelica and Beatrice used displacement magic to separate their feet from the black mud. As for the puppets standing on the black mud, their bodies began to undergo some black changes. There was no doubt that the corrosive power of the black mud had reached its peak. Wuming could feel that the black mud that Julian released last time was nothing compared to this black mud. Understood. Bazette responded, and without waiting for Wuming to finish, he rushed toward the attacking enemies. Wuming raised his eyebrows, feeling helpless. You guys go too. Okay, big brother Oniai-sama. After that, Shiro Amiya covered his body with magic and turned into Amiya's costume. Sakura Madu took out the card that Wuming adjusted before and used Dream Summoning. Install Dream Summoning. The lower half of her body was a normal black armor, but the upper half of her body was a black armor that could only cover her chest. A black mask with only a slit covered her face, and a few lines that looked like electronic cables extended out from behind Midori Sakura. Red mana patterns also wrapped around his body. Even his black armor and mask had red mana patterns on them. Because of Wuming's modification, the black armor was slightly blue, and it didn't have the arrogance of Berserker. It was very suitable for Sakura Madu, a woman like Sakura Madu, to use it, and it could reflect Sakura Madu's beauty. Let's go together, senpai. Sakura Madu smiled at Shiro Amiya. Shiro Amiya reacted, but he didn't blush or even feel embarrassed, but he smiled and nodded. Let's go together, Sakura. Wuming looked at the two running away and shook his head helplessly. Really, you're still so lovey-dovey on the battlefield. However, Wuming smiled. Both of them had found a good home. Looking at the black mud followers that kept emerging from the black mud, Wuming opened his hands. Then let's begin, my followers. My followers, my servants, the time for war has come, so now, show your brave and fearless figure, for your master, for the king. Before the black mud had completely corroded the ground, the earth had already turned golden. 3-meter-tall steel golems walked up step by step, as if they were walking on a staircase. The iron golem that came up from the golden ground had a layer of faint golden light. That was the power of origin provided by Wuming. And those followers that emerged from the black mud had starlight that was as deep as the universe. That was the power of origin provided by the black mud. The power of origin had infinite changes, and there was no fixed form. Even Wuming, who was born from origin, couldn't clearly understand origin. Holy Grail! Holy Grail! Holy Grail! Countless black mud that couldn't be seen were like zombies, moving slowly in the direction of Wuming. These were the heroes that pursued the Holy Grail but didn't end well. Now they were eroded by the black mud, and became abnormal. Bang! An iron fist hit the black mud follower at the front. The iron golems under Wuming's command were inanimate and unconscious magic products. The level of the iron golems was not very high. They could only be used as cannon fodder in many top battles, and they were only level 70. However, these iron golems had great magic resistance and physical armor. Although their attack power was not very good, they were quite good as meat shields and delay time. Moreover, Wuming's origin dragon's aura was added, So these iron golems had a resistance and restraining attribute against the black mud followers. It was just an armed fist, but with a body that was 3 meters tall, the impact of the fist was not weak, and with the restraining attribute given by silent sound, the black mud followers that were attacked by the iron golem were all emitting black smoke, and they were in great pain. However, as a mutual restraint, the black mud followers could also completely subdue these iron golems with the origin dragon's attributes. Just like divinity, in general, divinity often had the power to add damage to everything. But if it encountered a weapon or power that restrained divinity, then the guy with divinity would be unlucky. One by one, the black mud followers pounced on the iron golems, and their huge bodies brought poor flexibility. The iron golems fell to the ground and were divided by the black mud followers, turning into pure magic power and disappearing. The black mud followers and the iron golems began to fight. At present, it seemed that the iron golems were obviously at a disadvantage, and their foundation was a lot worse. Sure enough, these iron golems alone can't fight against the followers. Even these cracked followers are the same. Wu Ming said in a tone that was expected. However, it's enough to hold them back. Suddenly, whoosh whoosh whoosh. The sound of something breaking through the air was heard. Wu Ming moved gently and dodged several noble phantoms. The noble phantoms fell to the ground, causing a violent explosion, and then turned into golden particles and disappeared. Wu Ming looked at the place where the noble phantoms were shot. Angelica stretched out a hand, and several golden ripples appeared on the gate of Babylon behind her. "We meet again, Hianriyang," Angelica said coldly. Wu Ming looked at Tong Ying and Bizet, who were being held back by several puppet-level card users, and Wei Gongshiro, who was being held back by Beatrice. Then Wu Ming looked at Angelica again. "You're going to be defeated by me, and you're lucky that you didn't die. Why, do you still want to try your luck?" On the contrary, Angelica, who was usually emotionless, expressed her feelings this time. "I want to defeat you, Sensei." Angelica's originally emotionless eyes revealed a desire to fight. "I see. Are you seriously affected by Gilgamesh's card?" Wu Ming saw Angelica's current state. Gilgamesh was originally a top-level heroic spirit. Theoretically, even if he was eroded by the black soil, he should be able to maintain his consciousness and not disappear. However, the black soil was not ordinary black soil. It was black soil that was mixed with the root dragon's aura and had the power of the root. This caused the meaning of Gilgamesh's card that Angelica used to be basically clear. However, even if Gilgamesh had lost his consciousness, his power was not something that ordinary people could use. Angelica was subconsciously affected. Coupled with her previous experience of failure, it caused Angelica to be obsessed with Wu Ming. "No matter how you look at it, it's your fault, Gil." Wu Ming looked at young Gil, who was standing at the side without moving. "You can't blame me for this, Sensei. It's natural for the disciple to surpass the master. We've never fought before. It's understandable that my lower body wants to surpass you. If you want to blame someone, blame it on being my mentor, Sensei." Young Gil waved his hand and pushed the blame to Wu Ming. Wu Ming smiled. "If that's the case, then I'll fight you as Hianriyang, Gilgamesh's mentor, Angelica." Chapter 295. Swish swish swish. Countless relics shot towards Wu Ming from Angelica's back. Boom boom boom. Wu Ming dodged the relics one after another as he moved towards Angelica. The relics behind Wu Ming exploded violently, causing smoke and dust to fill the air. Young Jill, on the other hand, was watching the battle between Wu Ming and Angelica with interest from a high vantage point. Is he going to fight as Hianriyang's mentor? I remember that my mentor taught me about combat. Does this mean that my mentor is going to fight with my lower body as a warrior? Young Gil sat cross-legged on the platform with his hands supporting his chin. How nostalgic. Just as young Gil expected, Wu Ming, who was almost in front of Angelica, took out Yggdrasil from the golden ripples at the side. Tisk. Angelica frowned and snorted unhappily. Subsequently, the golden ripples behind Angelica increased in number. Swish swish swish. However, Wu Ming, who had obtained the weapon, began to display his endless martial arts skills. Clang 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 clang. Wu Ming controlled Yggdrasil, and displayed the martial arts skills that he had learned from the Mirror Queen, Skaha. Countless relics that were shot towards Wu Ming were deflected. There was nothing fancy or beautiful about it. It was merely a display of martial arts skills to achieve a goal. There were not many fancy moves in the art of killing. The only goal was to kill the enemy. On the other hand, Wu Ming, who had bounced off countless relics, was getting closer to Angelica. Suddenly, a gap appeared in front of Wu Ming, who was moving forward. In an instant, Wu Ming was transported far away. After dodging a few relics, Wu Ming stood firm and looked at Angelica. In a sense, the Ainsworth family's displacement magic is really cheating. Wu Ming leaned on Yggdrasil and said helplessly, "Ha ha ha, I didn't say that I'm going to fight you as Gilgamesh, mentor." Young Gil, who was in the sky, laughed heartily. Angelica did not agree, but did not refute either. "Well, you're right. It's on me this time." Wu Ming smiled. "Then let's start the next round." Wu Ming's eyes suddenly became sharp. A few lune runes appeared and wrapped around Wu Ming's body. Coming. In an instant, Wu Ming's speed became extremely fast and almost reached supersonic speed. Angelica continuously released her relic, but she could only hit Wu Ming's. If that's the case. Angelica opened two parallel spaces behind her, allowing countless relics to constantly move between the two spaces created by the displacement magic, making the relics in the Gate of Babylon accelerate without limit. In an instant, Angelica cancelled the displacement magic, and countless relics burst out at supersonic speed toward Wu Ming. Clang, clang, clang. Although Wu Ming was hit, Wu Ming's reaction was still able to bounce them away. Yggdrasil. In an instant, Wu Ming performed primary release on Yggdrasil, and threw it toward Angelica. The World Tree God's spear rubbed against the air and shot toward Angelica by leaps and bounds. Hum! Accompanied by a faint sound, the space in front and behind Angelica was replaced. Yggdrasil in primary release was just a holy spear with a fierce impact and vitality. It didn't have any extra attributes. Yggdrasil passed through the space and slammed into the ground, causing a violent explosion. The wind caused by the explosion blew Angelica's ponytails, making them flutter in the wind. "Your relic doesn't work, Henryong." Angelica still looked indifferent. "Then use the sword." That was Wu Ming, who had taken out X Silver from the golden ripple. X Silver. Wu Ming performed primary release on X Silver. In an instant, light gathered on the sword, and X Silver turned into a huge light sword. As Wu Ming uttered the true name, the lightsaber was violently swung out. The dazzling light rushed toward Angelica. Clang, 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 clang. Shields emerged from the Gate of Babylon behind Angelica and fell to the ground. The shields were stacked on top of each other, forming a shield relic. Boom! The light cannon bombarded the shield, making a loud noise. Angelica dispersed the shield and looked at Wu Ming. "I've been waiting for you." Wu Ming suddenly got in through the gap between the scattered shields and raised the holy sword toward Angelica. Wu Ming used the light and sound of the light cannon as a cover, blocking Angelica's vision and hearing, sneaking in front of the shield, waiting for an opportunity to attack. "Don't even think about it." Angelica was shocked, but fortunately, she was vigilant in advance and instantly used displacement magic again. Because the preparation was a bit hasty, this time displacement magic only replaced a small space. It only replaced the space at the tip of the meteor silver and the space behind Wu Ming. "But, if it was me in the past, I might have fallen for it," Wu Ming suddenly said. Just as the meteor silver was about to enter the space, a golden ripple suddenly appeared in front of the meteor silver. As Wu Ming leaned forward, the entire meteor silver was swallowed by Wu Ming's space relic, Dragonist. Pa! Wu Ming's hands entered the space and came out from the space behind Wu Ming, hitting Wu Ming's back. Wu Ming smiled when he felt that he had punched himself. "It feels good to massage my own back." However, Wu Ming's weapon was gone. Angelica naturally wouldn't let go of such a good opportunity. "I didn't expect the famous master Henryong to make such a low-level mistake." As Angelica spoke to me, countless golden ripples surrounded Wu Ming and relics appeared one after another. "No, how could that be?" Wu Ming smiled. "I see. It's that move." Young Gil, who was sitting in the sky with his legs crossed, recalled something and said with interest, Since young Gil had already recalled it, it didn't make sense that Angelica, who was subconsciously influenced by Gilgamesh, didn't notice the lower half of young Gil's body. Angelica looked at Wu Ming's smile and felt a strong sense of uneasiness. It seems like Gilgamesh's card power has sensed something, Wu Ming said, but he didn't let go of his hand. Wu Ming clenched his fist and countless vines broke out from the ground and entangled Angelica. Yggdrasil, who was not far behind Angelica, had already activated his relic and was ready for battle. Swoosh! The sound of chains was heard and a few golden chains entangled Angelica, sealing her magical power. In just a few breaths, Qianruyang had subdued his disciple, the Hero King. Chapter 296. Here you go, Angelica. With that said, Wu Ming put his hand on Angelica's stomach. Wu Ming exerted force, and Angelica's whole body glowed. The pain of being stripped of her class card made Angelica moan. When the light dissipated, Angelica, who was bound by Enkidu and vines, changed her clothes into a set of home clothes. And Wu Ming had an extra card in his hand. Archer. Wu Ming read the name on the class card. This class card was Gilgamesh's upper body. Wu Ming threw it behind him indifferently, and a small hand caught the card. The owner of the hand was young Gil, who had already come down from the floating platform in the sky. You've really helped me a lot, teacher. Young Gil looked at the class card in his hand happily. Okay, I've found your upper body for you. Be a good audience and watch this farce. Wu Ming knew his disciple well. Once he regained his real body, it was hard to say what would happen. Yes, I didn't want to participate this time. I'm still very interested in the comedy between teacher and clowns. You have a bad taste. Wu Ming raised his eyebrows. By the way, what are you going to do with this woman? Young Gil pointed at Angelica with interest. In this regard, Wu Ming fell into silence. On the other side, Shiro Amiya and Beatrice. Don't run, come and fight with me. Beatrice was like a psychopath, madly roaring at Shiro Amiya, laughing, and constantly smashing Mjolnir in her hand at Shiro Amiya. I'm sorry, but I know my limits. If I'm hit by this hammer, I'll be finished. Shiro Amiya jumped, dodging the incoming giant hammer, and the surging lightning on the giant hammer. Hee-hee-ha-ha-ha. Then why don't you just obediently die? However, Beatrice did not care about Shiro Amiya at all. She just kept attacking Shiro Amiya. TSK, this power isn't something that a simple person can possess. Wei Gong Shirlang once again dodged a lightning strike by a hair's breadth, and said while panting heavily. However, the user is a berserker. Beatrice was now like a berserker. She laughed wildly and controlled the Mjolnir in her hand to attack crazily. If that's the case, then I'll kill him in one strike. Instantly, Shiro Amiya's eyes turned cold. Race on projection began. Shiro Amiya's feet suddenly stopped, and he quickly turned and ran toward Beatrice. You finally stopped running? Then go to hell. Beatrice looked at Shiro Amiya, laughed, raised the Mjolnir, and began to charge. Immediately, Shiro Amiya waved his hand, and blue lines lit up on his body. Several noble phantoms appeared out of thin air, and shot toward Beatrice. It's completely useless. Beatrice smirked as she swung the Mjolnir that was still charged with electricity down on the ground. Several noble phantoms made by Shiro Amiya were directly smashed and disappeared. Race on projection began. In an instant, Wei Gong Shiro raised one of his hands, and a gigantic sword that was as tall as the heavens and the earth was projected. Is it a Galima? Beatrice recognized the huge weapon at a glance. Beatrice once saw it in Angelica's treasure house. That weapon was one of the two swords held by Zabarba, the god of war in Mesopotamia. It was a noble phantasm called Igialima, the green horizon of 1,000 mountains. There's one in Angelica's treasury as well, but it seems like yours is just a fake that imitates its appearance. Beatrice did not retreat, but went forward and slammed the Mjolnir in her hand on the fake Igalama. Boom. Crack. Igalama and Mjolnir collided with each other, and with a cracking sound, Igalama was directly smashed by Mjolnir. Ha 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 ha. It's great. That's great. Beatrice laughed maniacally as she stood on the mountain-slicing sword that was stabbed into the ground. Beatrice, who was laughing, suddenly found that Shiro Amiya was gone. "Are you going to play hide-and-seek this time?" "Hee, Beatrice said with a smile. "It's the mouse that eats the cat." Shiro Amiya's voice came from behind Beatrice. Beatrice turned her head and saw Shiro Amiya holding a black bow with a strange spiral arrow on it. The moment Beatrice turned her head, Shiro Amiya let go of the bowstring. Boom! The spiral sword exploded, and the flame buried Beatrice. The wind set off by the explosion blew Shiro Amiya's robe. It seemed that Beatrice had disappeared in the flame. However, Shiro Amiya did not let down his guard. "Very good. That's it. Resist and then be crushed under my feet." Beatrice rushed out of the flame, shouting excitedly, and her expression became more and more ferocious. Beatrice rushed directly to Shiro Amiya. Roajax blazing 7 circles. Shiro Amiya opened the cherry blossom shield with one hand, blocking Beatrice's hammer attack. Although it seemed that the injury was not light, Beatrice became more and more courageous. She chased after Shiro Amiya and hit him all the way. Each petal was as thick as an ancient city wall. 7 petals. Looking at the rapidly decreasing petals, Shiro Amiya sighed again. "You're really a berserker. You're really as difficult to deal with as a cockroach." "You're the same. You're as difficult to deal with as a mouse." Although Beatrice said that, she did not stop her actions. Her Mjolnir kept hammering the 7 blazing rings Roajax madly. Boom! The last petal broke, and the cherry blossom shield in Shiro Amiya's hand was broken. "Die!" Beatrice's eyes flashed fiercely, and the lightning on Mjolnir suddenly exploded, carrying out a fatal blow. However, Shiro Amiya only projected a pair of black and white dual swords. Crane wings fall no, mind skill Mount Tai, mind skill crossing the Yellow River, mind skill receiving heaven. 2 heroes share the same fate. The dual swords that were less than a meter long changed shape, and became a pair of black and white dual swords that were more than a meter long like 2 wings. A few red lights flashed in the smoke behind Beatrice. Random. Triple-linked crane wings triple combo. Slash. The sound of the blade cutting through flesh was heard. 2 pairs of ferocious wing blades, together with the pair of long swords in Shiro Amiya's hands, cut through Beatrice's body. Shiro Amiya used the smoke and flames of the explosion produced by the pseudo-spiraling sword to hide the other 2 pairs of Moi swords. When Beatrice was focused on Shiro Amiya and thought that she had won, he launched a sneak attack from behind and successfully took down Beatrice. Shiro Amiya's dual swords were on the neck of Beatrice, who was paralyzed on the ground and could not stand up, and said condescendingly, "Now you're a general, berserker." Chapter 297. The scene changed. Wuming looked at Angelica and thought carefully. Young Gil looked at Wuming and Angelica with interest. "I originally wanted to kill her directly." At this moment Wuming, who had been silent for a long time, spoke. Wuming did not lie. When Angelica and Beatrice came to Ilia's parallel world together, Wuming opened the inherent barrier with the idea of blasting them into pieces. Although he also did not want young Gil to obtain half of his body. As the saying goes, things are constantly changing. I've been abandoned by Lord Darius. Now, I'm an abandoned person. You can kill me or cut me up as you wish. Angelica looked at him. Oh, you're quite self-aware. Young Gil's smile became even brighter. Obviously, young Gil had also seen through Angelica's identity as an abandoned person. Wuming was the same. It would be better to say that Wuming discovered that Angelica was an abandoned person earlier than young Gil. It was Darius's order to go to the parallel world to capture Mayu. However, only Angelica and Beatrice were sent to capture her. After all, Darius had several new puppet subordinates by his side. There was no need to send out Angelica, who had Gilgamesh's card, and Beatrice, who was suspected to have Thor's card. Most importantly, Wuming did not believe that Darius did not guess that Wuming would be by Mayu's side. Knowing that Wuming was there, Darius still sent a team of only 2 people to the parallel world. It was obvious that these 2 were already dispensable abandoned people. Well, since you've already accepted your fate, Then stay here obediently. After everything is over, I'll deal with you. Wu Ming said simply, then controlled the vines and Enkidu to release Angelica. As for Angelica, she stood there obediently as if she was a captive, not moving at all. Seeing this scene, Wu Ming frowned in disgust. Of course, he did not hate Angelica, but he hated Ainsworth's displacement magic. Angelica's identity was already known. She was Julian's sister, the eldest daughter of the Ainsworth family. She died when Black Mud was released by Darius, and was then replaced by the displacement magic. Unlike the puppet that Wu Ming saw before, it was full of emotions and selfishness like Atlam. Instead, it was a puppet that took the master's orders as the highest order. On the other hand, the puppets that Tong Ying and Bizet fought against were of a lower level. They were emotionless, irrational, and selfless. It could be said that they were purely used for the class card to possess them and act as combat power. Tricks that played with souls, no matter which world it was in, would be punished by the heavens. Zelik once talked to Wu Ming that the Ainsworth family had something to do with the crisis of the world's destruction. In addition, Darius was the ancestor of the Ainsworth family, and he lived to this day. Wu Ming didn't believe that he had no ulterior motives. And such a family that played with souls. Even if the descendants wanted to change, it was already impossible. Julian, who was almost completely replaced, was the result. Aria's father, sister, and everyone in his family had all died in the disaster that had happened almost 6 years ago. It was also during that disaster that Julian began to be replaced by Darius. As for the so-called Erica Ainsworth, she was of a higher level than Darius. Wu Ming suspected that if Zelik didn't save the world, the restraints would probably send people to destroy the Ainsworth family. Wu Ming shook his head helplessly. If you can, try to make yourself smile. Then, Wu Ming walked in the direction of Shiro Amiya and the others. Angelica was stunned. She touched her face. Smile, huh? Young Gil looked at the puppet and shook his head. As expected, there will be a day when you get tired of toys. Then young Gil followed Wu Ming's footsteps. Only Angelica, who was ordered to stay put, stayed on the spot alone. Nehrer, later to arrive first. Bizet abruptly used his fist to push out the dagger that had revealed its true form. Flagelak, slash of the war god. Thud. This was the sound of the exhausted backlight sword falling to the ground. Plop. This was the sound of the puppet opposite Bizet who used the class card falling to the ground. At this point, the class card users who surrounded Bizet and Sakura Madu were all killed. This should be all the enemies. Bizet moved his body that was a little stiff from using the backlight sword too many times. Yes, Miss Bizet. I'm also done here. Sakura Madu walked over from the side and said politely, looking at the wreckage of the backlight sword on the ground. Even the usually serious Bizet's mouth twitched. Almost all the backlight swords in my inventory were used up. Bizet comforted himself, but it was worth it after all. It wasn't a loss. These people have become puppets without any sense of self. It's so sad. Sakura Madu looked at the simple automatons on the ground and said sadly, however, because they don't have any sense of self, we can turn the tide under the attack of so many enemies. Bizet tidied up his clothes and picked up the cylinder that was used to store the backlight sword. Now the cylinder was completely empty. No matter what, there were multiple servants. Even if Bizet could use the backlight sword to offset a servant's noble phantasm, facing many servants, Bizet couldn't use several backlight swords at the same time. If these servants used their noble phantasm at the beginning, Bizet and Sakura Madu might really die here. That's right. I hope these people's souls can go smoothly and not be used by bad people. Sakura Madu prayed. At this time, Shiro Amiya came to Sakura Madu's side. How is it, Sakura? Is it over? Shiro Amiya carried a red-haired loli who was unconscious and held a berserker class card in his hand. Yes, Senpai also defeated the enemy. Are you injured? Sakura Madu asked Shiro Amiya with concern. Shiro Amiya shook his head. I'm fine, but this person was not injured by my fatal attack, so I directly knocked her out, and the class card came out. As he spoke, Wei Gongshi waved the rank card in his hand. In short, Senpai is fine. Sakura Madu's face under the mask showed a smile, looking at Shiro Amiya. Shiro Amiya was a little embarrassed, and his cheeks were red. Is everyone okay? At this time, Wuming came. We're fine. Bazette looked at the black mud and steel battle that was still going on in the distance and said, Oniai-sama. Sakura Madu bowed to Wuming. It was obvious that Sakura Madu was not injured. Brother. Shiro Amiya took the red-haired loli, and the class card in his hand in front of Wuming. Sure enough, she is the same as Angelica, a non-degraded version of the class card. Wuming took the class card, and then looked at the unconscious Beatrice. Just when Wuming wanted to say something, the virtual screen from Shoasuke's residence suddenly appeared. Rin and Osaka's slightly anxious face appeared. Wuming, hurry up and leave that place. I've detected a large amount of magic power condensing here. Chapter 298. Wuming and the others set off, while Rin Enbin and the others entered the control room. Rin Enbin and Livia stood in front of the control room with their arms crossed, while Livia stood elegantly in front of the control room. Neither of them spoke. Callis floated between the two, waiting helplessly for them to move. Ms. Rin, Ms. Livia, please hurry into the control room. Master needs backup. Callis' cold voice sounded. Yeah, you're right. Wuming needs my backup. Rin Enbin proudly flipped her twin ponytails. What a joke, Rin Enbin. I'm afraid that you don't even know how to activate it. What if you press the wrong button? Wouldn't Wuming's magic workshop be destroyed? Livia looked at Rin provocatively. Don't worry, I'm very honest. I'm not like some blonde girl who only knows how to show off. Rin Enbin and Livia looked at each other. It was as if sparks were flying between them. The battle between their gazes was abnormally intense. Humph. I won't argue with you today. Rin Enbin finished speaking and walked into the control room. I should be the one saying that. Livia caught up with Rin Enbin and walked into the control room together. However, the control room's door couldn't accommodate the two of them at the same time. Thus, the awkward situation of the two of them being stuck in the middle of the door was created. Get out of my way. You're the one. You barbaric monkey. The two of them were like contestants in a competition. They pressed their palms against each other's palms. Their crazed faces were pressed tightly against each other. Callis was silent. A pair of wings grew out of her dragon horn headwear. Smack. Smack. Callis retracted her wings and spoke elegantly. Ladies, please enter the control room in an orderly manner. I was sent by Master to supervise the two of you. If you don't listen, I have the right to continue my actions. Rin Enbin and Livia covered their swollen faces with tears in their eyes. How dare you hit my face? Really, how can you treat ladies like this? Rin and Osaka and Livia protested. In the blink of an eye, Kelly spread out her wings. Ah, Livia, you go in first. No. Ling, you go first. The moment they saw the pair of wings, the two of them became like a loving family, and began to be courteous to each other. Please hurry up. Callis's voice was mixed with a trace of annoyance. This time, Rin and Osaka and Livia stopped being modest and entered the control room in an orderly manner. Callis followed him in the air. Coincidentally, this scene was seen by Ilya, Blackie, and Mayu, who had entered the Shoyu residence with curiosity. Unexpectedly, I feel that Miss Callis is very dignified. She doesn't look like a ruby at all. Ilya looked at the ruby floating beside her with disdain. Mayu and Little Hay nodded in agreement. Even Sapphire nodded humanely after a moment of silence. Wait. What do you mean you don't look like me at all? I'm a negative teaching material. Also, forget about Mayu and Little Hay. Little Blue actually bullied me with Ilya. Woo-woo. After saying that, Ruby turned around like a human and let out a sobbing sound. Sister, please be more reserved. Don't be so embarrassing. Sapphire comforted her with a tone of it's so troublesome to have a childish solution. Also, Senior Emerald is indeed more dignified than you. As expected of Master Wuming's exclusive magic attire. She's as reliable as Master Wuming. This time, it was Ilya's turn to be embarrassed. I feel like Sapphire means that I, the one with the ruby, am unreliable. Are we really going in? Mayu raised her hand and asked. Mayu, Ilya, and Little Hay came here to see the magic workshop's activation. Of course, Mayu was instigated by Little Hay and Ilya. Of course we're going in. Otherwise, why are we here? Little Hay waved her hand, expressing helplessness. Yes, Mayu, since we're here, I think it should be fine for us to go in and take a look, Ilya said embarrassedly. But the control room is the core of Brother Wuming's magic workshop. Even if Sister Ling and Sister Livia went in, they were accompanied by Kalis. The last visit was also accompanied by Brother Wuming. It's not good for us to go in like this. Mayu felt that Wuming didn't tell Mayu and others about the existence of the control room, because of the importance of the control room. So with her two little friends' instigation, Mayu still felt a little nervous. It's alright since Big Brother was able to let Ling and Livia, these two rash brats, into the control room. I'm sure he'll be on guard against them. We're not like them, not to mention, isn't Kelly still inside? While speaking, Xiaohei pushed Mio and pushed her towards the control room. I know, don't push me, Mayu said with a red face. At this time, the Shoyu residents shook. Mayu, Little Hay, do you feel the vibration here? Ilya, who was standing in the same place, said in detail. It must be said that although Ilya was very rash and sometimes like an idiot, she was often the first to discover something. Last time when Bizet attacked Livia's house, it was Ilya who first noticed the vibration and felt that something was wrong. Only then did Ilya pull Little Hay to Livia's house. Is there? I didn't feel it. Me too. Little Hay and Mayu stopped and shook their heads. At this time, rumble. The Shoyu residents shook violently as if there was a great earthquake. What? What happened? What's going on? Earthquake. Ilya, Little Hay, and Mayu were all shaken by this great vibration and fell to the ground. Ling and Livia must have done something in the control room. Little Hay made a prompt decision. He immediately got up and rushed toward the control room. Wait, Little Hay. Ilya called out to Little Hay and got up from the ground. Mayu did the same. She immediately got up and chased after Little Hay with Ilya. Ling, Livia, what are you doing? Little Hay rushed into the control room and started shouting. After shouting, Little Hay was stunned. Wait, Little Hay. Ilya caught up from behind. Then Ilya and Mayu were also stunned. The control room that was originally like a laboratory was now shining with starlight, as if it was a magical technology. Every instrument emitted a light that could penetrate one's heart. The twisted wand floated and emitted a 7-colored light. The simple and unadorned book emitted a dazzling light like the stars. Rin Enbin and Livia were standing in front of the big screen in the center. Rin Enbin and Livia were communicating with Wuming on the screen. When they saw Ilya and the others come in, they asked in confusion, "Why did you come in?" Chapter 299. Rin and Osaka and Livia stepped back, leaving Kalis to talk to Wuming. Rin and Osaka and Livia greeted the three Lolas. Sister Rin, Sister Livia, what was the earthquake just now? Ilya asked shyly as she told them about the violent tremors that happened just now. It might be because Wuming and the others were fighting with the enemy, ahahaha. That's right, looks like the enemy is very strong, ahahaha. Rin and Osaka and Livia pretended to be calm as they laughed. It's suspicious. Little Black stared at Rin and Osaka and Livia with a scrutinizing gaze. Then Little Black retracted his gaze. Well, I'll trust you this time. Rin and Osaka and Livia, who pretended to be calm, secretly let out a sigh of relief. At this time, the conversation between Kalis and Wuming entered their ears. We're on our way to your location, and will arrive in about 5 minutes. Kalis reported to Wuming. Okay, I understand. Kalis, remember to keep an eye on these two and don't let them cause any trouble. Yes, Master. Kalis immediately turned off the communication. The dragon horn headdress turned around. Even though it didn't have eyes, Kalis's intimidating gaze made Rin and Osaka and Livia feel a chill. Then Kalis opened her mouth. Although due to Miss Rin and Miss Livia's improper operation, the workshop isn't operating normally, but for now, the lunar temple is operating normally. Then, Collis floated to the central platform and sat down steadily. Miss Rin and Miss Livia, please go to your designated location. The lunar temple is moving towards Master. Yes. Rin and Osaka and Livia said with enthusiasm, and immediately got to work. Miss Collis is still quite dignified. Seeing this scene, Ilya once again expressed her opinion. By the way, how is the thing moving towards Big Brother moving? Fly or teleport? Xiaohei asked with great interest. Regarding this, Miss Chloe can go to the control room and take a look through the window. Collis' voice sounded. With puzzled expressions, Blackie, Mayu, and Ilya left the control room. As soon as they stepped out of the control room, the three of them found that the original Japanese-style structure of the Shoasuki residence had changed into a futuristic blue color. This is. Ilya's heart was filled with shock. There's a window over there. Xiaohei pointed somewhere. Although it had become sci-fi, the internal structure of the Shoyu residence had not changed much. Little Black casually found a window and opened it. Then he led Mayu and Ilya to lie on it and look outside. What the three of them saw was a misty sky and a house the size of a toy on the ground. At this moment, the Shoyu residence had changed from its original square residence to an ancient temple that resembled an airship. As for the insignificant changes to the internal structure, it could only be attributed to spatial technology. Is it flying? Blackie, Ilya, and Mayu were all shocked. Is this what Big Brother meant by being able to fly? It's really amazing. Ilya had a look of excitement. What do you guys think? Mayu, Blackie. Yeah. Mayu said indifferently to express her agreement. Moreover, Mayu's eyes that were filled with pleasant surprise showed that Mayu's heart was not calm. Look. At this moment, Blackie pointed somewhere below. Mayu and Ilya looked over. It was at the side of Winterwood City. There was a huge crater. From the center, a large area of black soil and a large area of golden soil surrounded the black soil covered the huge crater. That's not black soil, but black mud. Mayu looked at these things and said thoughtfully. Although Mayu had never seen it before, Wuming had once told Mayu stories about the battle between Wuming and Ainsworth. Through her own judgment, coupled with her high-altitude vision, Mayu was able to guess that it was black mud. It really seems to be black mud. Is this the black mud that Big Brother said absolutely cannot be touched? Ilya leaned forward and said while looking into the huge crater. Those fighting with Big Brother's iron golem should be the black mud followers that Big Brother mentioned. Blackie pointed at the indistinct figure that was fighting with the iron golem at the intersection of the black mud and golden soil. Brother Wuming and the others are also there. Mayu saw Wuming, Shiro Amiya, and the others who had defeated the enemy and stood together. At this moment, the originally open window suddenly closed. This startled the three of them. Maybe something happened. Let's go to the control room and take a look. Blackie said and took the lead to run to the control room. As soon as they entered the control room, Ilya and the others heard Rin Enbin's voice. Wuming, you guys quickly leave there. A large amount of magic is being detected here. The screen in front of Rin Enbin showed the image of Wuming and the others. Although Rin Enbin said so, Wuming shook his head. There's no need. After that, Wuming turned his head and looked at the center of the crater. In the center of the crater, where Darius had disappeared, there was something strange. The black mud followers that were about to win suddenly stopped and turned into black mud and merged into the black mud on the ground. Like a tsunami, black mud burst out from the center of the crater and spread out at an astonishing speed towards the surroundings of the crater. It was estimated that it would take a few seconds to return to Wuming. This feeling, what is this? Ilya looked at the black mud through the screen and felt the trembling in her soul. Not only Ilya, but also Blackie, Mayu, Rin Enbin, Livia, and the others felt the malice from their soul. Rin Enbin and the others began to tremble through the screen, not to mention Shiro Amiya and the others who were at the scene. Wuming stretched out his hand and Enkidu appeared and tied up Shiro Amiya and the others. Then, Wuming took them into the air. Rin used the teleportation device to retrieve Shiro and the others. Wuming looked at the screen floating beside him and said to Rin Enbin, as for the young Gil, Wuming didn't see him before. Rin Enbin nodded and shouted to Livia on the other side. Livia. Understood. Then, a small opening opened at the bottom of the lunar temple that was close to the big hole. A device similar to a signal receiver extended out. The device lit up. At the same time, Shiro Amiya and the others' bodies also lit up. In an instant, Shiro Amiya and the others disappeared. They had been taken back by the lunar temple. Big brother, is it really okay to leave one person behind? Shiro Amiya, who was teleported to the control room, quickly came in front of the screen and said to Wuming in a worried tone. Ilya and the others were also very worried. Especially Mayu. She was about to cry. In comparison, this thing could make one's soul tremble. Don't worry, this black mud can't do anything to me. Wuming said gently and told Mayu and the others not to worry. Gradually, the remaining iron golems on the battlefield were swallowed up. Flying in the air, Wuming saw Angelica, who was still in a daze. Heavenlock, Enkidu, extended and silent cry pulled Angelica, who was about to be touched by the black mud, up. At this point, the black mud completely covered the big hole and swallowed all the iron golems. Chapter 300. Wuming helplessly hugged Angelica, who was dragged up by the heaven lock. I told you to stay put, and you really stayed put. Don't you know how to move when danger comes? However, Angelica calmly looked at Wuming. As a puppet, I have to follow orders. Looking at Angelica's serious and stubborn eyes, he felt even more helpless. Rin, help me teleport her back to the lunar temple. Wuming decisively said to the screen that was still open. Are you sure? Rin Enbin was confused. Although Rin Enbin had never seen Angelica before, she was undoubtedly an enemy. She has already died once in Mount Yuzong. I killed her. There is no need to kill her a second time. Then, Wuming looked at Beatrice, who was thrown to the side by Shiro Amiya. When Wuming tied up Shiro Amiya and the others with Heavenlock, Enkidu, Shiro Amiya grabbed Beatrice. Even Beatrice was taken back to the control room by the lunar temple. Even Shiro didn't kill anyone. Do I look like someone who would kill innocent people? Rin Enbin smiled awkwardly as he complained in his mind. I don't know who said that he had already killed the other party once. Yes, I understand. Rin Enbin sighed and nodded. A moment later, Angelica's body began to glow, and she was obediently teleported to the lunar temple. Then with this, there will be no more restraints. Wuming stretched his arms and legs. The reason why everyone was teleported to the lunar temple was to prevent them from interfering with Wuming. Once again, Wuming didn't want to take over the power of others. Back then, Wuming planned to attack Darius' headquarters alone. After obtaining the power of a god, Wuming, who reached the root of his hometown, had the ability to do so. Well then, have you come out, Darius? After Wuming shouted. Darius's laughter came from the replacement space in the center of the big pit. Ha 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 ha, as expected of the legendary dragon, Lord Hyunryong, to be able to defeat all of my dolls. After saying that, Darius walked out of the hidden space and revealed himself. However, Darius was holding a little girl's hand. The black mud was produced from the little girl's body. Wuming couldn't help but frown. This girl was none other than the friend that Mayu had happily introduced to Wuming. Erica? Mayu exclaimed in surprise when she saw this scene through the screen that had yet to be turned off. No matter what, Erica was someone who wanted to befriend Mayu. Even if they had become enemies for some unknown reason, Mayu still couldn't help but worry about Erica. What's more, Erica's eyes were lifeless at the moment, like a doll's. That's what you want to say, Lord Hyunryong. Darius pretended to be elegant, although this still made Wuming nauseous. Wuming didn't say anything, but his piercing gaze still told Darius. However, Darius continued his disgusting elegant speech as if he didn't see Wuming's cold eyes. Given everything by everyone, a body made of God's clay, a magic box with disaster and hope since birth, this is her name. Pandora. Wuming said Erica's real name. Ever since Wuming saw Pandora in school, Wuming had already seen through, guessed Erica's true identity. She was wrapped in endless darkness, but at the core, there was a glimmer of light. coupled with the faint aura of a god's generation. Wuming wasn't 100% sure at first, but after Darius' speech, Wuming was 100% sure. Erica Ainsworth's true identity was Pandora, the magic box that contained countless disasters created by the gods in the place of the gods, the sorceress that made people sigh with pity. Now I've finally opened Pandora's box. Ha 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 ha. It was as if Darius had realized his lifelong wish. He laughed with all his strength, and kept on laughing. Hearing this laughter and seeing this scene, Mayu, whose soul was trembling due to the influence of the black soil, became even more afraid. She took 2 shaky steps back. No. Erica, however, 2 hands pressed down on Mayu's back. The warmth from the palms caused Mayu's trembling body to stop. Mayu turned around and saw a pair of similar faces. Ilya. Little Black. Mayu said in a daze. Don't be afraid, Mayu. Ilya looked at Mayu with an unusually firm gaze. You still have us here. Little Black smiled mischievously. That's right. Rin and Osaka adjusted the glasses that he had put on at some point. Everyone is here, Mayu. Livia looked at Mayu with a gentle smile that wasn't arrogant. Shiro Amiya and Sakura Madu smiled at Mayu. Although Bazette didn't smile and had a serious expression, Mayu saw encouragement in his calm gaze. Everyone. Seeing that everyone's souls were no longer trembling, Mayu was touched. Mayu-sama, please don't be discouraged. Sapphire flew into Mayu's hands at the right time. Sapphire, I understand. Mayu hugged Sapphire and nodded at everyone. Perfect. Perfect. Next, it's time to fight the Great Demon King. Ruby suddenly shouted in a high-pitched voice. Bam. Instantly, a fist sent Ruby flying. You bastard. Can't you just be quiet? Rin and Osaka maintained his punching posture, and said in a slightly annoyed tone. Protest. Violent protest. Ruby, who was fine, flew back and protested Rin and Osaka beside Ilya. Looks like you're itching for a beating, Ruby. Hey. Rin and Osaka, you're finally acting like a lady. Can't you be more obedient? What did you say? I've always been a lady, okay? Seriously, why are you 2 fighting again? Sister 2, doesn't she know how to read the atmosphere? Mama, everyone stop fighting. Senpai, you're not dignified at all. That's why. I'm really unlucky to be betrayed by the higher-ups. I can't believe that I'm working with you guys now. Mayu smiled happily as she looked at the people who were playing around. While inadvertently paying attention to the big screen, Mayu saw that Wu Ming was looking at her gently without relaxing for a moment. Feeling her beloved brother's encouraging gaze, Mayu nodded again. Kala sat on the main control platform and reported to Wu Ming. Master, the spirit world barrier has been successfully strengthened. Everyone's souls are no longer affected by the black mud. Well done, Kalas. Yes, thank you for your praise. At this moment, Darius stopped laughing. Now I don't need the Holy Grail anymore. You and the Holy Grail will be destroyed together, Hyunryong. That you're tuning in to the Echoes of the Heart YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.